Okay, welcome everyone. We're going to start. I hope you can all hear me. Welcome to Israel Now, our insider briefings, where we aim to bring interesting voices from Israel and to provide you, our wonderful community and JNF supporters, with real-time insights from experts and thought leaders who are deeply engaged with Israel's current reality. So while we may be very far geographically from Israel, the objective here, quite simply, is to connect Australians a little more closely to things going on in Israel. And before I introduce our guest speaker today, just a tiny bit of housekeeping. First of all, you should have all received our Blue Box Pesach campaign email that went out. Please be advised that our AGM in New South Wales is taking place on May 7th. Mark your calendars. You're all welcome to join us. And if over the Pesach break or anytime soon, you or your friends are planning to travel to Israel, please get in touch regarding our Israel Day tours. All of this can be found on the JNF website. Please know that during this webinar, you are welcome to submit questions via the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. You'll see there a little icon for Q&A. Feel free to ask questions and we will come to those questions at the end. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Boaz Ganor. Boaz, you were just recently in Sydney and I had the chance to see you while you were here. You were here to launch the Australian Friends of Reichman University chapter, and I'm very happy to be an alum of the Reichman University. So I met you there. Just briefly, your bio is quite elaborate, but just briefly, for those who are not familiar with Boaz Ganor, Boaz is the president of Reichman University. He's also the founder of the International Institute for Counter-Terrorism, the ICT. He served as the executive director of the ICT and as the dean of the Lauder School of Government, Diplomacy and Strategy. In 2019, Professor Ganor spent his sabbatical in Australia, serving as a visiting fellow at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute and as an adjunct professor at the Australian Graduate School of Policing and Security at the Charles Sturt University. You've provided briefings to the Australian Parliament on counter-terrorism matters. And you've been in various academic positions in various universities and institutions worldwide, including Stanford and Berkeley and others. You've been an advisor to the Israeli government on counter-terrorism. You've served on Israel's National Security Council Advisory Committee on counter-terrorism. You were a consultant to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for his book on fighting terrorism. You're published extensively. Your expertise has been sought by the UN Counter-Terrorism Executive Directorate, the US Congress, the FBI, and various intelligence and security agencies globally. You are frequently in the international media, whether it be BBC or CNN or New York Times or Wall Street Journal, providing your expert commentary. And now you appear before us. Let me know if I've missed anything out.
Well, I wouldn't even start to let you know, but thank you for reminding me about my background. Thank you.
Okay. Boaz, thank you very much for joining us. I think what we'll do here, we'll start with, I think the obvious, perhaps lessons learned from October 7. Can you just share with us what went wrong in Israel's intelligence and the defense systems, and what were some of the key takeaways and perhaps some of the security reforms since the attack?
So let me start, Sarah, by sharing with you that in my previous position, I was nominated as the president of Reichman University a year and a half ago, actually 2 weeks before the war started. But 30 years before that, I was founding and heading, as you have said, the Institute for Counterterrorism at Reichman University. And our biggest project, 2 years before the war started, was a project that I've convened with 100 Israeli experts, former heads of all the services in Israel, Mossad, Shabak, military intelligence, police, National Security Council. For months, we sat together and we analyzed the threat or the possible threat of multi-front war that will be imposed by surprise on Israel. Now, in a retrospective point of view, it might remind something. But at that time, it was almost science fiction. And we concluded our understanding and recommendations within a booklet of 100 pages that was not published. We took this booklet and we sent it to all the Israeli decision makers, from the prime minister and downwards. Actually, I would say prime ministers, because we ended the work when Bennett was the prime minister. But when the government has changed, we also introduced that to the other governments. Well, Bibi Netanyahu refused to meet with us. But others, 43 leaders, heads of security agencies in Israel, decision makers, political decision makers, and others met with us. And let me share with you from the closed rooms what was there. The meeting before the last was conducted before the war, about 2 months before the war. It was with Gallant as the Minister of Defense. 3 of us, actually 4 of us, came to present the findings of our work to him. And we started with a scenario. The project actually starts with the chapter, which is a scenario. What will happen if and when this war will erupt? I can tell you that it almost goes along the lines of what really happened on the 7th of October, but on steroids, because we actually referred to a surprised invasion attack coming not only from Gaza, but also from the north, from Lebanon, and some other activities. And after a few hours of discussion, and in the meeting, there were about 6 generals of the IDF that Gallant invited to the meeting. Gallant ended the meeting by saying that he's very concerned listening to our scenario because he knows what is the scenario of the IDF at that particular period of time. And he understands the huge differences between the 2 scenarios. And therefore, he nominated one of the generals to sit with us and dig in, try to understand why we do say this and the army believes differently, why we did believe that there would be 3,000 rockets a day being launched towards Israel, and the army thought much lesser than that, and so on and so forth. And this meeting was held a few weeks before the war started. I was there. And this general brought about, 15 colonels of his, and we presented again our scenario. And he approached one of those colonels, the general approached one of the colonels and said, how can you explain the difference between our scenario and their scenario? Probably this colonel was responsible to write the IDF scenario for the war. And this guy, sitting there with typical Israeli arrogance, as 7th generation Israeli can say that the Israelis are arrogant sometimes. So he was sitting with a huge smile on his face and he said, sir, I cannot explain the differences between our scenario and the scenario of the Institute for Counter-Terrorism. And the general said, why not? He said, because I see intelligence on a regular basis and I don't know where they get this scenario from. What they rely on, I don't know. So I cannot even compare our notes. And I actually, as of that, I said to the general, there is no reason to keep on this meeting because we cannot even compare notes. This guy dismisses us because so-called we don't see intelligence. Actually, not so-called. We didn't see intelligence. But you did need intelligence in order to comprehend what is going to happen. It was all there. It was all on open sources. We had videos of Hezbollah, of Hamas, explaining exactly what they are going to do. And what was the explanation? Exactly what happened, but in a bigger scale, as I said, because it should have been simultaneous attack. So going back to your question, Israel has fallen to exactly the same mistake, or should I say in plural, mistakes of October 73, Yom Kippur War, exactly one after the other. We were arrogant. We didn't believe that they have this even idea of attacking us. Why? Because we are so strong and nobody would dare to do that, so they don't have intentions. Then, in both cases, we believe that if even by coincidence, they will have some kind of intention, they will not have the capability to materialize that. Why? In 73, it's because of the fertilized Suez Canal that we have built there, the Bar-Lev line, which is called, that it's not crossable, nobody can cross that. And now it was the electronic fence and the sophisticated fence that we built with billions of shekels that cannot be crossed. By the way, in both cases, they crossed that in minutes. They learned that, they found the downside of those facilities, and they overcome that in minutes. So that was a second mistake. The third mistake was that we went to sleep on that specific day. It was, as we all remember, Sukkot, Simchat Torah, and it might take our viewers by surprise, but those days, for many years, in some of the holidays, Yom Kippur and Simchat Torah, we have this kind of an overall vacation in the army, as if the army can take a vacation, and the number of soldiers that were left for securing the Israeli border was less than minimal altogether. Same thing, Yom Kippur and the 7th of October. And the other thing, which is very important, in both cases, there was concrete intelligence that was not paid attention, wasn't taken by the intelligence officers in the level of threat that it was posed by this intelligence. So if you take it all together, and it's almost inconceivable. It was exactly 50 years after the first failure that we had exactly the same failure on the 7th of October.
It's really interesting that you bring up the Yom Kippur War 50 years earlier. When I was in Israel on October 7th, and of course that was the talking, lots of people were saying, this is 50 years to the day. I can't believe this is 50 years. But the big difference with the Yom Kippur War and this one, the battlefield in Yom Kippur War was there. It was the battlefield with the soldiers, and it was not in Israel proper. Of course, there was some psychological torment with the wives and the mothers of their husbands and sons who were out there fighting. But October 7th, on October 8th, we thought that there were 3,000 terrorists who had penetrated the borders and were on their way to Tel Aviv. Lock yourselves in your home, get locks for your safety doors because there's terrorists on the loose. And we know that in Kfar Aza, the last terrorist was killed, on day 3 or day 4 still. Can you say something about the psychological impact of the October 7 attacks, the toll they've taken?
Yeah. You are right by noting this difference. It is a real difference. The Yom Kippur War was conducted mainly in the Golan Mountains and the Sinai. And although people in Israel were under severe anxiety because this was an existential war, I still don't know, by the way, why the Egyptians, after beating the Israeli army, stopped before Beersheba and didn't march further than that. They didn't have a plan to do that. In the 7th of October, it was exactly the opposite. The plan was to get to Tel Aviv, but thanks God, they were stopped before being able to go much further from the border of Gaza. But from the Israeli notion, it was a huge strike in the sense of security of probably all the Israelis. I certainly remember myself, and with all due respect or humility, I would say that I'm more knowledgeable than others, so I was not taken by surprise. I remember I was waking up at 6:29 with sirens. We ran to our shelter at home, and after the sirens, I went to make coffee, and my wife went to watch TV, and I was shouting to her, "Where did it come from?" And she said from the south, and I said, "Thanks God, it's not from the north." So that was what was crossing my mind, because on the 7th of October, it was probably the most disastrous day in the history of modern Israel, but it was also a day of an extreme, remarkable, I would say, not success, but we had this a miracle, no lesser than that the northern border was not open. Because if it would have been started in the same manner that the southern border was erupted, or simultaneously, or even immediately thereafter, we would see not the Nukhbas, but Radwan forces of Hezbollah doing the same things in Haifa, in the northern cities. And thanks God this didn't happen. It's very interesting to analyze why it didn't happen. But this horrific day was also a miracle day for Israel in this regard. But since then, and even until today, we have so many Israelis living under PTSD, post-traumatic disorder. And I'm not talking just about the brave soldiers which are fighting, still fighting in Gaza and other places. I'm talking about regular people. You've noted the feeling in the street. I remember people called me. I live in Herzliya, and they called me and they said, you know, they live in Herzliya, they live in Tel Aviv, and they said, we hear noise under our building. Could it be that they dug these monstrous tunnels of there and they reached Tel Aviv? It sounds ridiculous, of course, but the psyche of the PTSD of that people at that time that saw those white trucks with those monstrous terrorists driving in Sderot and other places and shooting all over, it's still very clear in the minds of all the Israelis. And I think Israel is totally different after the 7th of October than what it used to be on the 6th of October.
Yeah. In Tel Aviv, I distinctly recall that many people have these safe rooms in modern apartments, their own safe room, and the safe rooms come with a very heavy door, like cement, like a door. But many people take that door off because they're heavy and inconvenient. And after October 7, everyone was looking for someone that can help put the door back on and a locksmith that can lock the door, because we'd heard the horror stories of what happened with the terrorists on the loose. So if you were a locksmith on October 8, somewhere around anywhere in Israel, you were busy locking people's safe rooms. This brings us, I guess you've mentioned now Hezbollah. Can you tell us more about the most pressing security threats that's facing Israel today, right now?
Where should I start?
We could spend a whole hour on this.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go over all of the frontiers very briefly, with your permission. And we'll start with Hezbollah, since you have mentioned Lebanon. Well, Israel had a remarkable success in attacking Hezbollah, based, of course, on few tricks or techniques or procedures that have been prepared for months and years before the war started. And I refer, of course, to the beeper operation and the walkie-talkie operation, which was connected to the beepers. And of course, it was shown that Israel had a remarkable intelligence capability, knowing exactly where the leaders of the organization are at a certain time and a certain point. And of course, the Israeli Air Force capability showed that they can reach those terrorists, archi-terrorists, and eliminate them wherever they are, regardless if it's, I don't know what, dozens of meters beneath the surface of Earth. So Israel had a remarkable success, hitting hard both the operational structure of the organization with the beepers and the walkie-talkies and the leadership of the organization, and also eliminating quite a bit of the launching capability of the organization. Although I wouldn't underestimate the capability that they still have, it's still, I would guess, a few dozens of thousands of rockets. Some of them are long range that they still can use, but they were taken by surprise, by huge surprise. And their leadership was decapitated, and nobody could make the decision to open the frontier in the way that they planned and could have done if they just would decide to do so. Right now, it seems that Hezbollah is trying not even to recover. Yes, they want to recover, but at least to be stabilized and then to take this point in order to recover. And Hezbollah is finding many problems. First of all, they have something that they didn't have before, and this is internal criticism, huge criticism coming from the people, and also a different government with the leadership which is anti-Hezbollah by definition. It never happened before. And I personally have high hopes with this new prime minister of Lebanon and his own government. This is something that we didn't see for decades in Lebanon. As we will talk about that in a minute, Iran is not in a position right now that they can give extensive support to Hezbollah, and therefore it delays or prevent the recovery of Hezbollah. And also it denied their capability to buy the hearts and minds of the Lebanese, because they don't have the money that they used to have coming from Iran. So this is really a distressful moment for Hezbollah. And just yesterday, I don't know if you heard that, one of the speakers of Hezbollah said that they don't exclude the possibility of disarm themselves if under the condition that Israel will withdraw from the positions that Israel is still holding in the southern of Lebanon. And Israel is hitting Hezbollah even today, almost on a daily basis, every second day. Hitting operators and shelters and weapon of Hezbollah, and Hezbollah is refraining from retaliation against Israel. It explains this fragile situation that Hezbollah is in. Syria is a problematic outcome for Israel, if you ask me. As you know, El-Julani, the nickname El-Julani, by the way, hint that this guy origin is from the Golan Mountain. El-Julani, that took over Syria and actually rebelled against Assad and won the war with a huge help coming from Turkey. He's now trying to stabilize his position there. He's taking some kind of an official position that, you should not be worried. I've changed. Frankly, I don't believe this. El-Julani is an extreme Islamist jihadist that joined in the past to Al-Qaeda, was and practically still member of Al-Qaeda. And then he founded Jabhat al-Nusra, which is a splinter of Al-Qaeda in Syria. And maybe compared to Daesh, some people would say, well, he's more normal. I would not give him any benefit of the doubt in this regard. So I'm afraid that after he will be able to stabilize the situation in Syria, and by the way, Jordan might be next in his wish list with probably the help of Turkey. It's true that I don't see this possible coalition or combination between Iran and El-Julani, at least not for the time being. But suddenly we have another villain in the neighborhood. This is Erdogan, that has a presence, growing presence in Syria. And I hope that we won't see the time that Turkish soldiers will have a direct front line with Israel, but we cannot exclude this possibility as well. The positive side is that Israel understands the threat, and almost on a daily basis, Israel is attacking the military facilities of the remains of the Assad regime that have been taken over by El-Julani. And actually his military capability right now is very, very low, almost null altogether. But for a long period of time, it does raise a concern. As for Gaza, from my point of view, I think that we are engaged in war of attrition that should have been stopped many months ago. I am afraid that the government have posed a goal, actually one goal, which is cannot be achieved, and this is what is got the nickname of the ultimate victory. We have to understand that Hamas is a terrorist organization for sure, but it's also Muslim Brotherhood branch, and the Muslim Brotherhood is a strong, dangerous, ideological concept that actually you would find it in every Muslim country and every Arab country, and in Gaza this is the main way of thinking. So I'm not saying, okay, we should accept that. No, I do believe that many months ago and today, at that specific moment, we can reach an agreement that would deport the leaders of Hamas and would free the hostages. I thought that this could have been done many months ago, and it definitely can be done, but Israel doesn't want to stop this war. Some would say in Israel, I want to be politically correct. Some in Israel would say, yes, Israel doesn't want to stop the war, but this is a good reason. It's a national reason. We didn't finish the job. We still need to eradicate Hamas. Others, including me, would say probably that the reasons that the Israeli decision makers refrain from ending the war are not necessarily just from national point of view, but also from political and maybe even personal point of view. And we didn't speak about Iran, but let's leave this.
So you've mentioned Hezbollah, Lebanon, Iran, Syria, Gaza. Talk to us about the Houthis.
Okay. Yeah. Now, the Houthis is no more and no less than an Iranian proxy. And this brings us a little bit to talk about Iran in this regard, because Iran have created this rainbow of proxies that in their strategic plan, they had to do the job for Iran. It's Hezbollah in the north. These are the Shiites militias in Syria and in Iraq. This is the Houthis in Yemen, and this is Hamas and especially Palestinian Islamic Jihad in the West Bank and in Gaza, and also even try to infiltrate to some extreme elements among the Israeli Arabs, the citizens of Israel. That was the plan. Now, if we look on what happened to that plan, it was almost destroyed. Hezbollah is, I wouldn't say neutralized, but definitely beaten severely. Hamas almost neutralized. Palestinian Islamic Jihad, same thing. Shiite militias also have been badly beaten and are looking for some kind of a ceasefire. And the only remain active proxy is the Houthis. Therefore, Iran is giving all the backup which is needed for the Houthis to still be active and to keep on the flame working. And this has actually three tracks. The Houthis are, as we all know, trying to prevent the maritime transportation in their area. They are launching almost on a daily basis still ballistic missiles towards Israel. Even yesterday, it's not being reported because most of them are being thwarted before they reach Israel. And also the Houthis, as the long arm of Iran, is spreading to to Africa, to Sudan, Ethiopia, and other places, trying to combine forces with Al-Shabaab and with other Islamist jihadist terrorist movements in those regions, and create a new type of threat to the Middle East, to Israel, to Jordan, and to Egypt. So yes, I would take them as a serious threat. I think that President Trump is taking them as a serious threat. And if President Trump did something militarily wise since he was appointed, this is exactly that. He changed the attitude of the American military towards the Houthis and hit them hard on a daily basis. But this is, again, a terrorist organization. This is a hybrid terrorist organization which is embedded within the civilian society. It's very difficult and probably impossible to have an ultimate victory also against the Houthis, i.e., to eliminate them. You can lower their capability, you can hit them hard, you can change their motivation to keep on attacking, but eliminating would be very difficult.
So one of the questions that has now been asked in the Q&A by Peter Smaller was precisely this: why is it proving so difficult to neutralize the Houthis? I mean, you just said that yesterday there was another ballistic missile. I've got the app on my phone, so I see it when it happens in real time. They have not been neutralized. They continue to pose a very serious threat. Why is it proving so difficult?
So let me give you a very short lesson on counterterrorism as a counterterrorism teacher or expert, if you wish. There are different types of terrorist organization, but the type that we're interested in our discussion today, I call this a hybrid terrorist organization. Hezbollah is a hybrid terrorist organization. Hamas is a hybrid terrorist organization. The Houthis are a hybrid terrorist organization. ISIS used to be a hybrid terrorist organization when they controlled the territories of Syria and Iraq. And what is a hybrid terrorist organization? It's a terrorist organization that controls both territory and population, and therefore the hybrid terrorist organization is embedded within the civilian society and posing a huge and different type of challenge to every Western society that fight this organization. First lesson that we've learned, and the Americans have learned in fighting against ISIS in Syria and Iraq, that probably you cannot win a war against a hybrid terrorist organization, again, which is embedded within the civilian society, without boots on the ground. As much as you would use the Air Force for these purposes, although you will conduct a lot of collateral damage, but forget about the collateral damage for that matter. Some would say maybe they deserve even that. But it won't end the problem because they are embedded in the civilian society, in so much scattered all over, and Air Force is not enough. You need boots on the ground. The Americans always have been reluctant to use boots on the ground, not against ISIS in Syria. And by the way, the one who won the war against ISIS was not the Americans, in my view, in Syria and Iraq. It was Russia, it was Assad, it was Turkey, it was Iran, Hezbollah. The Axis evil won the war there, and not United States, because they were reluctant to have boots on the ground. And by the way, I'm not criticizing them. If I would be an American, probably I would be against American boots on the ground as well in all those conflict areas around the world. In Israel, the problem is even greater than that, because we don't succeed to win this war, ultimate victory. We won the war, but not an ultimate victory against Hamas, although we have a lot of boots on the ground and for a long period of time. The reason is because they're not on the ground, because they're underground. And now you need boots underground. That Israel is very reluctant to do, and rightly so, because it will be a high cost for Israel to have a huge campaign underground. We have here, we have there, but this is not a systematic underground war that we are conducting. So suddenly the history of modern terrorism have changed. You don't need just boots on the ground, you need boots underground as well. And Hamas learned the lesson. Probably the Houthis would learn that in the future.
I want to pick you up on something that you said a few minutes ago, which was the term collateral damage. I find it very interesting that with the US, attacking the Houthis, we don't hear much in the news about the collateral damage caused as a result. And yet, when we look at Israel's defense strategies, we deal with a lot of headwinds when it comes to international perceptions of Israel's defense strategies, and we hear a lot about collateral damage. Can you share with us something about these challenges?
It will be a very short answer. Hypocrisy. And I don't think that any of your viewers will be surprised that that's the answer. The world is hypocrite. They always single out Israel. They always measure Israel in a moral measurement that they do not take as a judgment to analyze the activity of other Western society, let alone a superpower like United States. And yes, counterterrorism, and I'm teaching that for 30 years, counterterrorism, especially one which is engaged in conflict with a hybrid terrorist organization, always has to do with collateral damage. There is no other way, not because that the state is responsible for that, because that the terrorists are taking the civilian society as human shields. This is the strategy of the hybrid terrorist organization. They surround themselves with human shields. They build their fortified military compound next to most protected civilian areas, schools, kindergartens, UNRWA buildings, and so on and so forth. And then they dig themselves beneath mosques and beneath hospitals and so on and so forth. So if you need to fight a terrorist organization of that sort, you are engaged in collateral damage. There is no other way. The question, there are many questions here. This is a bigger lesson than our webinar today, is how do you measure collateral damage? And what is really collateral damage? And of course, this is a dynamic phenomenon. You judge differently a war situation than a targeted killing secluded in a Western country or something like that. That's a huge debate that the international community didn't solve. So they used the term collateral damage without measuring that, without the ability of taking under consideration the extreme situation and conditions in which the state is defending against repeated attacks by hybrid terrorist organization. This is the time for pundits to do the job, and unfortunately they didn't do the job. But going back to your question, United States is not being criticized, and if it would have been criticized, they wouldn't give a damn about that, because this is the sheriff of the world.
And on that segue, can you maybe share with us perhaps a little bit into the psyche of Israelis at the moment about Trump's proposal to turn Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East and to transfer Palestinians to Jordan and Egypt? How is it being received?
We are all standing in line to buy the land in the Riviera. I'm just kidding, of course. Look, I think that most of the Israelis see this as an anecdote, or should I say ridiculous anecdote, not more than that. Some extremists in Israel cling to that as the ultimate solution of the war. Yes, maybe, but I don't see in my mind, definitely not as President Trump was putting that, a voluntary activity of 2 million Palestinians today walking out from Gaza from their free will to live in the deserts of Sudan or Ethiopia or other African country. I don't see Jordan accepting them, because if they would do that, that would be the last thing that this Hashemite regime would do in modern times. There will be a rebellion and will fall down the Hashemite family. And I don't know if this would be regarded as a success to United States, to Israel, to the Western society, if Jordan will turn to be a Muslim Brotherhood, Palestinian extremist country. Same thing about Egypt. I don't see the Egyptians giving that option. Here and there, a few thousands, maybe even few tens of thousands, maybe, but this is far from reaching the goal of a Riviera in Gaza. So as long that we see the Riviera in AI cartoons, we can lay back and enjoy the scene, but it won't be in my lifetime, probably not in my grandchild's lifetime as well.
I'm not sure if you know, maybe you're aware that Australia has offered to take in 3,000, around 3,000 Gazans,
Yeah,
which is more than
the
I think.
Australians are very good in offering this kind of suggestion, and that they pay the price many years afterwards.
This is what I want to ask. What can you tell us about perhaps moving to Australia-Israel security cooperation and just connecting to Australia's national security as someone who's been here on your sabbatical and you were just here recently? Um, how do Israel and Australia collaborate, perhaps, on intelligence and counterterrorism?
Well, how transparent can I be with your viewers?
Very.
Very, very okay. So I actually have been 4 times in Australia. And in my view, Sydney is the second most beautiful place on earth after Tel Aviv. In a different lifetime, if I would choose to live not in Israel, it would have been in Australia. Now that's for the compliments. Now let's move on to the criticism. The Australians, if I would be polite, I would say in general are very naive, very, very naive. Some would say they are an important part of the useful idiots elements in the Western society. The people I met there in all my visits were very nice, and they were very interested. When they learned that I'm from Israel, I'm not talking about the Jewish community, I'm talking about the public at large. They were very fond of Israel, very supportive. I met decision makers, I met heads of security agencies, and always I got a very good reaction. The last visit, which was a month ago, was a little bit different. And first time ever walking in Australia, meeting some people, again, I'm not talking about the Jewish community, I felt unease being an Israeli. I know, of course, about all the anti-Semitist event that happens in Australia, and I had a professional talk with some heads of the police in different police agencies, talking about anti-Semitism and the threat to the Jewish community, and maybe giving some suggestion how to deal with it, and inviting them to come to our international conference in September to learn more about what should be done in order to protect the Jewish community. But when I hear from you that the Australians are considering to bring over a few thousand of Palestinians to live in Australia, I immediately remember the gracious step that was done by Australian government back then in the 70s, when there was the civil war in Lebanon, in which the Australians, in order to help and because they are loving and kind people, to bring Lebanese to save them and take them to Australia. Well, I think that some of the problems that you find today of anti-Semitism and other activities in Australia are coming from the extreme elements that came out of those immigrants to Australia. And I think that the lesson should have been learned by the Australians. Now, I won't get into politics, Australian politics, although I tried to learn a little bit about it in my last visit. But it seems that this is not coming just like that. This notion, this background of anti-Semitist activity, this turning a blind eye to that problem, it's coming from a high echelons of the current political establishment, ruling establishment of Australia.
I understand. Going back to the frontiers and the ones that you mentioned, external threats, again, Gaza, Syria, the Houthis, Iran, Lebanon. We didn't discuss the West Bank. Lately, there have been many developments happening there. Can you shed any light on what we should expect to see from the West Bank?
Yes. Yeah. Well, what we saw through the years, since the Oslo Accord until today, is that the Palestinian Authority became weaker and weaker, and enclaves of terrorism have been established in some parts of the West Bank, especially in the north, in the Jenin area. And they were posing and still posing a concrete threat to Israel, because this is a hotbed from which terrorists are breeding there and then coming to attack Israel. It happened many, many times before. Israel have warned the Palestinian Authority, and I have to say something in the defense of the Palestinian Authority. The good news was and still is that the Palestinian Authority as a whole, unlike Yasser Arafat, understands that terrorism is counterproductive for the Palestinian national interests, and therefore they prevent terrorism as much as they can. The problem is they don't have extreme capabilities. They are very weak, but at least their intention in general is good. Some people will say, yes, but they pay terrorists that are in jail and they don't change the school books. All true, and need to be criticized and need to be pressured to change that. But they do cooperate from the intelligence point of view with Israel. They do, if needed, extradite terrorists. They give information. They have a very productive relation with the Israeli counterterrorism authorities, and we need to bear this in mind. We shouldn't let the baby out of the bath with dirty water altogether. Having said that, since they didn't succeed to take the control on those enclaves, Israel has decided that this is the time when we have this almost all-front war to solve the problem or to try to solve the problem also in the West Bank. And some of the military efforts of Israel in the last half a year or so, a little bit more than that, was to get into those enclaves and uproot them almost in the way we do that in Gaza. And I think that this is a very important and smart move from Israel, because we don't want to see a situation of, I'm sure you're familiar with this balloon that is not full with full air. It's half empty, and then you press one place and it pop up in another place, and you press the other side, it pop up in the middle. We don't want this situation when we press Gaza, that the eruption will be in the West Bank, and then we press in the West Bank, the eruption will be, I don't know, in the north border. We need to deal with all those fronts, as we invested so much in the war in the last year and a half. So many people have been killed, soldiers have been killed, and the number of wounded soldiers is enormous. We do need to see the success in all the fronts, and therefore that's what Israel is doing now in the West Bank.
Now, there is another front, I guess we can call it. We've talked a lot about the external threats, but there is another threat to Israel's national security, and it comes from internal. I know it's less to do with counterterrorism, but it's a threat to national security. Can you say a few words about some of the internal divides that we see in Israel happening, between left and right, or secular and religious, and how we're going to solve that? What's the way forward?
Well, coming to the end of our webinar, you're dragging me to the niche that I was reluctant to get into it because
I should mention this was a question in the Q&A that Kevin Nafti has asked.
Okay, so I don't blame you. I blame the person that was asking the question, but I would refer to that. Look, again, I'm seventh generation Israeli. I was born and raised in Israel. I love Israel. I'm a Zionist with all my heart. I was serving at the reserve duty activity until a year and a half ago, when I was nominated as the president of the university. So until the age of 61. I did so many other things in counterterrorism in different Israeli echelons, as you've mentioned in the introduction. I was never worried for the future of Israel as I am today. Not because of anything that I've mentioned until now, not because of Gaza, not because of Hamas, not because of Palestinian Islamic Jihad, not because of Hezbollah, not because of the Houthis, not because of anyone, not because of Abu Mazen. And also, I would dare to say not because of Iran, although I'm quite concerned with the Iranian capability. We didn't talk about that, but mainly because of the internal issue. And the dispute in Israel, I would try to be balanced, but the dispute in Israel is not the dispute between left and right. Anybody who believes that this is the case is deadly wrong. It's not even because the dispute of the religious against the seculars or Haredics against the secular. Those are all disputes. I'm not trying to underestimate them. But the problem is between those in Israel, which is more than 50% of the Israelis, that believes that what the government calls the judicial reform, and the others, including myself, would call the regime revolution of the government. This is threatening Israel, not just the Israeli democratic structure, but also Israeli existence, because it brings us to be as closer as possible to Orban in Hungary, God forbid, to Erdogan in Turkey, and we are going to that road. We see that in every step of the way. It was done way before the 7th of October. I think that the 7th of October is an outcome of that process led by the Israeli government. And it was stopped temporarily for a year, but now it brought back full strength altogether. This is a totally irresponsible activity coming from the government. Now, let me be objective, okay? I might be wrong. Maybe the government is right. Maybe what they are doing is needed to be done in order to correct the judicial reform. I don't think so. I think they are ruining anything that might endanger their ultimate control. But let's say, for the sake of the argument, that they are right. But when they see what this is doing to the Israeli public at times of the worst war ever, it's their responsibility, not the opposition responsibility, not the protest leaders' responsibility. It's their responsibility to stop and say, until we reach this weird ultimate victory that we have established, that we have named, until then, we don't move an inch, because we need to be unified against this enormous external threat. This is their only responsibility. And then they can do and should do whatever they think is right. And that is the main blame that I put on the Israeli government right now. That without even getting into the discussion, is it right, is it wrong, is it the right, or it's not the right, or whatever, what is this doing to the Israeli democratic structure or the future, forget about all of that. Right now, they are having their hands on the control, and they need to stop it totally and immediately until the war ends.
I'm happy that we answered that question and that Kevin asked that question, because clearly it was a good one. And I think your final message there about we need to be unified at a time like this. This is a perfect note to end on. I'm conscious of the time and I don't want to go over. On Saturday night, we read the Haggadah, as we've always read for thousands of years. We say, L'shana haba b'nei chorim, next year as free people. And of course, we all hold close to heart the hostages, and none of us are really free until everyone is free. And b'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, next year in Israel. So
I'll be in Jerusalem, but you should come and visit us in Israel.
I will be bringing a delegation of JNF people, and some people on this call will be joining us. And throughout the year, we have Israel Day tours, as I mentioned.
If you'll pop up and pay a visit to us, you will have the red carpet.
Highly recommended. I want to thank you very much for joining us, Boaz. It's been wonderful and very insightful. Thank you very much. And I'll take this opportunity to wish you and your family and all our visitors joining here today, Chag Sameach, Chag Pesach Sameach.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.